Hello again, everybody, and welcome to our MPTV Coaches Show. Ryan Lindley and Eric Myers with you. And Eric, let's get right to it. Postseason has started in some sports. We're going to talk about that today on the show. And boys soccer kicked off the postseason last night.
Yeah, they played us last night, the regional semifinal against Metamora. It was a pretty awesome game right there. Powder's got a big win right there. Before we do that, though, we had the opportunity to sit down. You did, actually, with Coach DeLong and hear his thoughts on what he thought going into that game and how big this game was for the Potters. So real quick, before we get into anything, let's go hear from Coach DeLong.
Welcome back here, our MPTV Coaches Show. We're now joined by head soccer coach Tori DeLong. We're talking postseason in this episode. And before we talk about your postseason, let's go back and talk about the conference championship. You're able to beat Washington last week, Tuesday. We talked about it a little bit on last week's show, but obviously we had highlights. We didn't have your reaction. Just talk a little bit about that.
Just to be on top of the conference is an honor. We have a very strong conference with Dunlap, Washington, Pekin, and Limestone are competitive. Metamora's a good team as well. That to finish on top and on our own, we've been sharing it the last couple of times we've gotten conference. So to be on top by ourselves, it's a pretty cool thing. It doesn't happen very often.
And it's got to feel good. I mean, right? Sometimes you have that last game and you clinch conference, but to actually beat one of those other top teams to win it had to feel really good.
Yeah, I mean, both teams went in 6-0, and so the tie we would have shared, and neither team wanted that. And so it was an intense game. There's lots of physical play and lots of drama with it all. The coaches were intense and everything. So it's an exciting atmosphere when you're in that situation, and then it's great preparation for what we're going to be dealing with this week too.
Yeah, let's talk postseason. That's kind of why we're here. Let's talk a little bit about, the first game is Metamora. You mentioned a conference opponent, a good team, maybe not one of those top teams, but certainly whenever you play those conference teams a second time, sometimes even a third time in the postseason, it's got to be a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. They're going to adjust. They are traditionally a defensive-minded team, and we got all over them earlier this year. And everybody I've talked to, if you look at their schedule from about week 5 on, they've given up less goals and less goals. So they've slowly figured out things, whether it's personnel or formation. It's going to be a much more difficult thing. Now, I'm not necessarily as concerned about the offensive side. Will they get in on us? They could, but it's definitely going to be a puzzle we're going to have to figure out to try to get in the back of the net.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit. I mean, we never want to look ahead, but just if you do get that potential rematch with Washington, obviously they have to win their game as well, so we never want to assume anything. But just talk about atmosphere. Like, what's that going to be like? This is, to play such a competitive regional, positive, I would say, prepares you for sectionals, but there's no doubt you have 2 top teams in your conference in a regional title. It's got to be an exciting atmosphere.
I think up until last week, they were ranked ahead of us on max preps and all the national sites and everything like that. So they're a quality team, and we played really well defensively. We were able to keep their star, who has 40 to 50 goals this season, we were able to keep him out of the net, which in itself is a really difficult task. But then you got to think about, can we do that for 2 games? Because he is an explosive individual. He's going Division I soccer at Bradley. He's clearly talented, and it's one of those weird, whether it's superstition or just my dad talking right now, whenever you try to play somebody that second time or that third time, and we're going to deal with that with Metamora, but then a very, very talented team to play twice, we got to assume they're going to make adjustments, and then you also got to think, what adjustments should we make? We're going to have to react. And so that's a tough thing to prepare for, knowing that they're the ones going to be doing something different, and we're going to try to do the same thing because it worked, but we need to be prepared to have to try something different, and that's a tough atmosphere to walk in on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last question, not specific to any game, but just something that I feel like a lot of people don't know a lot about that sometimes comes into play in the postseason. Talk a little bit about, in terms of soccer, difference between playing on grass versus playing on turf, because sometimes in the postseason you end up playing on both a little bit.
Yeah, and we will, if we're lucky enough to get through, the sectionals will be at Washington, which is on turf. Generally, the field doesn't play all that much different. It's just, it tends to be, at least in this area, it's inhibited by the track, and so then the field is narrower, and that's what takes longer to adjust, because the field plays faster anyway. Then you add possibly 5 yards less on each side, and that narrow structure of the field then makes it more difficult to play yet. So it isn't necessarily that the ball bounces differently, rolls differently, or anything like that, which it does a little bit, especially if it's wet, but it's narrowing the field and the pace of the ball, that the combination of the two sometimes just don't go well. And that's part of in the years past, we tried different things. We have an indoor complex there. A couple weeks ago, prepping for Washington, we went on the football field on a Sunday morning because we knew no one would be out there. And so it's just trying to get used to that pace of play. Years past, we've actually used the parking lot. And so put cones down in the parking lot, do some possession drills, and the ball moves so fast, it's kind of like dodgeball. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball, right? Well, if you can stop the ball in the parking lot, you should be able to stop the ball out on that turf. And so it's just all about doing little things to prepare for it and trying to keep the ball on the ground because it does bounce differently out of the air and it takes the spin. So if you can keep the ball on the ground and possess and keep control of things, usually it's not that impactful.
Awesome. Well, really good information, though. I think a lot of us that maybe are not soccer experts always curious when we hear about the differences. So it's good to enlighten the folks at home and myself. I'll be honest, I did not know all that. So, that's what we try to do is get behind the scenes a little bit here on our Coaches Show. We appreciate it, and we wish you the best of luck, Coach, in the regional, and hopefully on to the sectional after this week.
Let's roll, Soccer Potters.
So there we heard from Coach Long. You had a good interview. What did you take away from that interview and then watching some of the highlights from last night?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it sounds like the team outperformed his expectations as far as last night goes. I mean, the 8-0 win, the way he made it sound, he expected a close game. Maybe Metamora would be a little more competitive defensively, so I think it's a compliment to the Soccer Potters that they put in 8 goals. That's huge.
That's a really, really big game right there. Building that confidence going to the postseason. You lost a lot of guys from last year. Still, you have a lot of youth in this team as well, so really great opportunity, and look at this potential rematch versus Washington, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously that's the marquee game. That's the one everybody's paying attention to. I mean, Potters get the 3-1 win over Washington, last week, and Coach talked about that. Now they're going to play them again on Friday night for a regional title. I mean, that's what makes the postseason so exciting, though. The opportunity to play your rival in big games and make some memories for coaches, players, and fans. So, folks, I encourage you to get out there. And the game will be at Metamora. Encourage you to get out there on Friday and support them. Big
games right there. So, girls swim and dive, the Mid-Atlantic Conference meet is this upcoming Saturday morning at Pekin High School, 9 a.m. And our girls actually placed 4th in the Galesburg Invite last Saturday as a tune-up kind of match there. So good luck to our girls swim and dive team. Remember, there's a co-op with Washington and East Peoria over there. So if you have an opportunity, catch a swimmer and say hi.
All right, let's talk about girls tennis. Again, they're in the postseason, or were in the postseason. They competed at the sectionals at Metamora this past Friday and Saturday. They had multiple individuals and double teams make it to the second round of sectionals. Unfortunately, didn't get past that, but actually, I mean, a pretty good showing, I think, in that sectional for girls tennis.
Yeah, congrats on a great season, girls tennis, and get them next year, right? Another young team trying to build up here. Going on, keep with the girls thing. Girls volleyball moved the record to above 500, right? We finally got above that next little thing there with a 15-14 overall with the win last Thursday night at East Peoria. They're going to wrap up the regular season this week with Dunlap and Washington, and then turn their attention to the postseason, where they're going to play Peoria Notre Dame next Tuesday at Richwood. So a great matchup right there.
Yeah, and I think they're going in the right direction, right? I mean, now above 500, chance to finish above 500 or at least even in the conference. I mean, obviously it sets up an interesting postseason for girls volleyball. It's interesting to see what happens next week.
Not only that, sometimes as a coach, sometimes it's good to click at the end of the season. You might have a whole bunch of new moving parts at the beginning. How are they going to fit? Who's going to do what? Who's going to take on those leadership roles? And then it all starts to click, and then it starts to roll, and then you get to get on that momentum train and go into the postseason, which is likely the best time to have it.
Absolutely. Speaking of clicking, cross country has clicked all year. Mid-Atlantic Conference meet last Saturday. Boys took 4 of the top 5 spots. Pretty spectacular. Josh Weeks was the overall top finisher. Jonas Wuthridge, Chase Souter also in the top 3. Leighton Knoop in the top 5. I mean, just a fantastic run there.
Yeah, unbelievable. 1, 2, 3, all within, let's say, 20, 30 seconds of each other. The Potters dominated that meet, and I know Coach Zeller was super excited about that. Not to forget, the girls cross country was able to post some fast times with Kerrigan Vandal and Tegan Byer both in the top 10 in that same meet. So great opportunities right there for our running Potters. So moving on to football, Coach. What a game.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you were a neutral fan, if you were just wanted to watch some good high school football last Friday night against Dunlap, great game. Unfortunately, from the Potter side of it, the 1-point loss in overtime, 35-34, is a little bit disappointing. But, credit to both teams, obviously, extremely hard fought, extremely well played, just come up a point short.
And last week was a little bit of an anomaly. I think all through the week, everybody thought the temperature was going to be, about 60, maybe a little bit cold, but overcast maybe. And then all of a sudden it starts raining at 4 o'clock. changes your game plan a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we had the benefit of playing on turf. But.
Yeah, but no, it does. I mean, I think, we saw in that game, and we even talked about it, or you talked about it with Coach Briley the week before, the idea of putting the ball in the air a little more often. And we did get one long touchdown pass to Michael Wong, but I mean, I think when the rain starts to hit, that sort of goes out the window a little bit.
Alters your game against the very well matched for us Dunlap team right there. Which leads us into this, our potential last game here this weekend, where we need to win on Friday night at Washington. What are the keys to this game?
Yeah, I think Washington's obviously a very solid team. I mean, they're 5-3 overall. Obviously, we're 4-4. I mean, the challenge there is Washington. I mean, as did we. I think we played a competitive non-conference schedule. Washington played a very competitive non-conference schedule. So, I mean, essentially, they've been very good in the conference slate. Obviously, they have a loss to Pekin. So do we, of course. They did beat the Dunlap team that just beat us, but ultimately, the keys to victory are, number one, I think we need to get off to a good start. I mean, I think, hopefully we're putting last week behind us. You never want to let a team beat you twice, but I feel like there was a tough finish to the game, not going to lie. And so I think getting off to a good start in this game is critical. And then obviously taking care of the ball. I mean, Washington's a team that always makes you pay for mistakes, so you have to limit those.
Yeah, and sometimes, as you know, we struggle when we go to play Washington, no matter what the sport, right? They're like, if you have that rival, they're right there, they're 10 minutes down the road. Another loud arena, or a stadium, I guess, is what it would be considered. But, they're going to pack the place.
Yeah.
They've already had their senior night, so that's a positive.
Yeah.
It's still their last game, so they want to win.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I know I talked to Tyson Hart, who's one of my assistant coaches for the JV level, about playing there his senior year, and they played there on homecoming when he was a senior, and he talked about just how loud it was, one of the louder environments that he'd been part of. I mean, Washington definitely shows up and supports.
So let's be positive here for the Potters. We're going to come out and work on this game. When does the IHSA release their coaches, or for their playoff?
So if fortunately, let's assume a Potters victory on Friday night, then you'll wait about 24 hours. It's Saturday evening that they'll release the playoff seedings. 5-4 doesn't automatically get you in; it just makes you qualified. That being said, I did kind of break it down. It looks like a 5-4 Potters team will be in the playoffs because what I did was I looked at all the 4-4 teams in Class 5A. 2 4-4 teams play each other. There's a 4-4 team that plays an 8-0 team, with the assumption that obviously one of them has to lose when they're playing each other. You also assume the 8-0 team will beat that 4-4 team. That opens up a few spots right at that range. 32 teams make the playoffs for each level of football. Opens up some spots there. Potters right now, we're ranked 33rd if you actually look at the rankings. So assume 2 losses, Potters win, at least gets you in. It might be 31 or 32, but it gets you in.
We're getting in, which is what we always want, which is playoff football. So one of the things is we haven't won in Washington in a while, have we?
We have not. It's 2014 was the last win there.
So Coach has a little bit of a highlight video here that we're going to go back to our 2014 highlights, the last time that we won versus Washington.
Let's take a look at that.
Potters are on the road taking on a very talented Panthers team. This is Tucker Anderson to Jake Starkey. Anderson's first varsity start. Potters were known as a running team, but they didn't get it going through the air. Anderson here finds Sam Rodagero for a touchdown out of the backfield. You see Sam sprinting into the end zone there. Potters get it on the ground here. They fake the option one way and got Jake Vickerman going the other way into the end zone for the touchdown. Back to the air, you see Vickerman go in motion. Little fake there, and Anderson finds Noah Peterson sprinting down the field. He'll get tackled about the 35, but it sets up Peterson's own touchdown. Full house backfield, handoff to Noah. He's in the end zone, and the Potters are once again on the board. A little bit of defense here. Starkey coming out of nowhere for the interception, making a big play to turn the Panthers away late in the game, and then Potters one more TD. Sam Rodagero once again. He did it through the air. This time he does it on the ground. He sprints into that end zone for his second touchdown. And then the final moment here, Washington trying to make a desperation comeback. Zach Ham flying through the air with the game-sealing interception. Potters end up pulling off an upset, 35-14 against a highly rated Panthers team to wrap up the season.
All right, so, I mean, obviously that game just, we bring that up because hopefully we're setting a positive tone for Friday night. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, that was a Washington team that in all reality probably was a heavy favorite. I mean, Washington may be arguably the favorite this week, but I wouldn't say as heavy of a favorite. And, I mean, 35-14, really, Potters showed up that night in 2014.
Sometimes not to go in as the underdog is not a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's just kind of flying to the radar. Let's come in, let's do our job, get it done. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for us this week. Obviously, get out, support your Potters. wherever they're going to be playing here as the next couple weeks starts. Lots of postseason activities for the Morton Potters athletics teams. And so for Ryan Lilly, I'm Eric Myers. Until next time, Potter Nation. Thanks.